The importance of self-development in a state agency. My name is Chris Watkin, and today I'm joined by Dan Firth in another one of the Agents Together Winning Ways videos, where we help you, the estate and letting agents of the UK, be better agents. Thanks for joining me today, Dan.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
Dan, what is the importance of self-development and investing in yourself? Talk to me.
Well, I think first of all, it's important, if I think about it personally, it probably took me a good decade to maybe even 15 years to understand that it is important.
You obviously started that as a child because you're a youngster.
Oh, obviously, yes, obviously. But I went through, sort of 10 years of, let's call it traditional estate agency, working in branches where I had my job to do. I went to work, I did it, I went home. It was probably only as I sort of came out of that traditional world and started having to think about my career and which direction I really wanted it to go in, where I started to think, actually, I need to invest in some time myself. And it was an old leader of mine that asked me a really poignant question one day, and it was just as simple as, what do you do for yourself? And I couldn't answer it.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that, if you go to the big conference in Australia for estate agents, and the ticket is over £600-700 in English money, British money, the people who are there are employed. A lot of them are employed and have paid for their tickets themselves.
Yep.
How many UK estate agents would pay for either to go to a conference for themselves or let alone their own training?
Very few, very few. And I think at the moment, estate agents and me for a long period of time didn't join the dots between that investment and what it would give you back in the future.
Is that entitlement or something else?
I think it's potentially entitlement in some cases, but I also think it's maybe just a lack of understanding of what that investment will give you, especially if you've gone through your career in let's use employed estate agency as an example. If you go through that employed estate agency world where you join as a negotiator, your job is to book viewings, sell houses, you get promoted, you become a valuer, suddenly it's to put houses on the market, then maybe you become a manager and you have to manage the people doing it. And it's all very prescriptive. I think it's only really over the last 4 or 5 years where we're starting to see people branch out a little bit and I would say do estate agency a little bit different, that people are starting to understand that that is important and they will have to do more of it.
What was your light bulb moment when you realised, actually, I have a personal responsibility to myself to improve myself and better myself?
Well, I think I touched on it then. It was when my new boss at the time asked me, what do you do for yourself? And he was as blunt as to say, we will take you so far, but if you want to really progress, you've got to start investing in yourself. And I think, if I think about why I wasn't doing it, I'm going to say I can't read. I said to me that I can't read. I can read, but I don't have the attention span for reading. And I would see, people would share books and say, you need to read this book. And I just had no interest in it. Tried, put them down and just couldn't do it.
Okay. Do you read books now or do you consume content otherwise?
No, and I think that was the light bulb for me, was finding a medium that worked for me. And it's podcasts. It's podcasts or speaking to people. I think if I try and read a book, it still doesn't work today. As much as I want to, it doesn't work. Whereas a podcast, I can fit it into my day, whether I'm walking the dog in the morning, driving in the car, or if I've just got half an hour to myself, I can listen to a podcast.
Because the main ways you can learn is reading, listening, or watching.
Yeah.
And you're a podcast person.
Love a podcast. I like to watch. I think people. I take information better if I hear it or see it, but I think that's most people in general. But podcasts, I would say, are my most popular.
Okay, but there's plenty of people that have got libraries full of books and don't read them, but more importantly, if they do read them, don't put them into action. How did you convert yourself from actually putting this stuff into action?
I think it was finding something that was interesting for me. And again, it comes back to that sort of people prescribing and saying, read this book or listen to this particular podcast. Actually, if that doesn't work for you, it for me, it would just go in and straight back out. Whereas actually sport for me is something that's, I understand sport, I understand the mechanics behind it, I understand the mentality of sport. So actually, if I can listen to someone talk about how they've been successful, for example, in sport, it resonates with me and I'm able to then take it and say, okay, well, how can I put that into my world? How can I help how can I be a better estate agent, or how can I be a better trainer or a coach, learning from sports people?
As you can tell, I'm a bit of an athlete myself.
Well, aren't we all?
What advice would you give to people in terms of what to listen to? Give me your top 3 podcasts.
I'll just go back to that point of find something that interests you. I think, we'll all have opinion on what our favourite podcasts are, but find something that interests you. I like the high performance podcast because I think naturally the guests that they attract are impressive. So I think straight away I'm sort of pulled to that name. But actually it's what they say, the content that's more important. So the high performance podcast is brilliant, and because it's not necessarily estate agency related, and I think that's quite important that we don't just listen to estate agents. Yes, we can all learn from each other and we can become better agents, but there's so much we can learn from other industries.
What's your motivation of developing yourself? Is it to earn more money, be happier, or anything else?
I think it's probably all of the above, but actually fulfillment in your role. If you develop yourself, you'll be more fulfilled in what you do. I found that I was probably better at things that I didn't know I was good at until I started pushing myself. So I started learning from other people and started actually that's of interest to me. Certainly as I moved into more leadership positions, it helped me enjoy work more.
Looking at your CV on LinkedIn, looks like you were just a normal journeyman estate agent, and then all of a sudden you rose up very quickly through the ranks. Can we match that rise up through the ranks to eventually, being top dog in Purple Bricks for training? Big national firm.
Yeah.
And I don't care what you say about them. It's a damn good firm. Can you match the two up?
Absolutely. Yeah. I was fortunate. People talk about falling into estate agency. I fell into training. An opportunity arose for me to go and become a trainer, which was something I'd never thought I'd be. Coming from traditional estate agency, where in my opinion training is quite negative. If you didn't perform, suddenly there was a training course for you to be on. And so I never saw myself in that world. But actually joining Purple Bricks, and like you said, say what you like about that as a business, actually reignited my passion for estate agency because it was different. It was a new challenge. So to become a trainer in that format was exciting. But actually very quickly, I needed to understand that actually if I was not just going to become a trainer, I could have just stayed as a trainer. I needed to develop myself, and it was taking myself massively out of my comfort zone, learning how to train, learning how to coach, which I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't.
Final question. It's all very good to train and develop yourself, but it's all about accountability to make sure that you follow through. Yeah. How did you make yourself accountable?
I suppose go back to find something that interests you and make sure you pull things out of it. Like you touched on earlier on, people will read books, put them back on the shelf, and then not do anything with it. And I would say that's because that what they've read or listened to isn't interesting to them. So if I find something now, I go and try and put it into place straight away. If I've heard on a podcast and, if someone watched my content, actually, if you listen to some of that content, if you'd seen maybe an hour before, I've probably heard or seen something similar. And I thought, actually, that will work. People need to hear that. So I'll try and put those things into practice as quick as possible.
Dan, thank you for your time today. And we'll see you on the next video where we talk about goal setting and habits. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.